So I don't have my book. All right. There we are. Okay. So now that we're live on Facebook, welcome to all of you who are watching live on Facebook. I've gotten some very positive feedback from our first lesson. For those of you who are on Facebook, and it is also on YouTube. That is available in our weekly email, the direct link to the YouTube video. So you can watch this at any time that you're available. If you take an hour, or even take 20, 30 minutes, I think it's a very, very powerful lesson, lesson one. So I just want to give a very, very brief recap, a 60-second recap, if I may, on our first lesson. I think it was a very powerful one. And sometimes the simple lesson is, it sounds so simple, but it's actually the most powerful tip. So last week, what we studied was that meditation is actually a very big part. It's an authentic Jewish practice, and it plays a pretty large role in Jewish life. And what we learned was that we actually have control over our feelings. When someone is feeling down, when someone is having a negative feeling or negative emotion, we actually can control that. Why is that, or how is that? Because we all know that our thinking feeds our emotions. The way we think about something affects the way we feel about it. So when we actually control our thoughts and we choose what we think at any given moment, so by getting rid of negative thoughts, you actually can cut off negative feelings as well. And the meditation that we practiced last week during the videos and during the lesson itself was that when you meditate on positive thoughts, it actually develops a positive mindset, and thereby it also develops positive emotions. So it sounds very simple, but it's actually very, very powerful. And that was last week's lesson. Now we are holding lesson 2. Again, if you have a book in front of you, we will begin on page 38 for lesson 2. So in this lesson, we're going to go actually a little deeper, and we're going to use meditation to go beyond our conscious thoughts, and we're going to access something a little deeper than our thoughts. And today we're going to be discussing the concept of spirituality and how we can use spirituality as a tool for meditation. So as we see on page 38, this is our first exercise of the class, is how would you define spirituality, and how might spirituality be experienced? So if you're on Facebook, feel free to comment on the Facebook Live feed, or if you're on Zoom, you can tell me what you think. How would you define spirituality? Let's start with that. Sandy, you're on mute.
Feeling, close to Hashem when we're praying. And one of the things we talked about, was to concentrate. And I thought that was so much better than just saying the prayers,
So
to concentrate on Hashem and know that, where you are is closer to him.
So you're saying spirituality is feeling close to Hashem. That's
Yes.
the way you would define it. Okay.
I think so.
All right. I see Fran just commented. We're on page 38, Fran. So we are trying to figure out how would we define spirituality. So I don't think you'll be surprised to hear this, but there is no set definition for spirituality. Actually, in a study that was done in 2005 in a survey, they found 27 different definitions for spirituality. And actually, none of the 27 definitions had any overlap between them. That means that many people define spirituality in a different way. You have 27 different ones. right? So that's not very surprising. Now, the thing is that we live in a world that's dominated by materialism because we're physical human beings, right? If you go down the street, what do you see? You walk down any street, you see people, you see cars, you see homes, you see buildings, you see streets, right? All you see is physical things. Everything we can see, hear, and feel is actually physical. So, and by the way, on the top of all that, in society, we all know that society places a very strong emphasis on material gain, on material success. And therefore, when that happens, automatically society defines materialism to be the end of all existence. This is the existence of the world. Because all we know, you open your social media, you see people flaunting their materialistic life. That's all you see. So living a normal lifestyle, if you live in this world in 2022, right? I think it's only natural that we identify with our material needs. Now, to answer the question, how would we define spirituality? So I think some people would tell me, Rabbi, I'll be honest, I don't sense, I don't have any sense of spirituality at all. Just like if I can't see it, if I can't feel spirituality, then it doesn't exist. Like the famous joke, I don't know if you guys ever heard this one, where the teacher starts, teaching the children of his class about evolution and how the world came to be. And therefore, he starts asking Tommy, do you see outside? Do you see the tree outside? Tommy says, yeah. Do you see the car outside? He says, yeah. Do you see the sky outside? He says, yeah. And he says, come back into the class. Do you see me? He says, yeah. He says, do you see God? So he says, no. He says, okay, there we go. If you could see everything, then it exists. Anything you can't see doesn't exist, right? So Tommy says, all right, I have a question for you. Do you see the desk in the room? So the teacher says, yeah. Do you see the whiteboard? The teacher says, yes. Do you see people in this room? So the teacher says, yes. Says, and then he asks the rest of the class, do you see our teacher's brain? So everyone says, no. He says, there you go. If I can see your brain, it doesn't exist, right? So the famous joke. Now, some people don't really feel or have any sense of spirituality at all. Some people will tell me, Rabbi, I have some sense of spirituality, but it depends. You show me a nice sunset, you show me a real majestic view, I'll tell you that's spirituality, right? If you show me a birth of a new child or a real piece of a work of art, that's spirituality. That's something spiritual. Now, all of these experiences, whether it's the birth of a new child, whether it's a beautiful, if it's a scenic view, or if it's a really beautiful piece of art, all of these experiences point in a direction that there's something beyond the physical makeup of this universe. The problem is that these experiences, these spiritual experiences, are not something you feel every single moment of your day. What you feel on an average day between all of you sitting and watching and joining this class, between all of us, what do we feel on an average moment? Materialism, right? We're so caught up with our material needs, and we don't really seem to identify with anything spiritual. So the question of today's lesson, this is going to be today's lesson, exactly this question. To sum it up, is it possible to have a real sense of something spiritual that's beyond the material things that we feel, beyond the material things that we see, and beyond the material things that we actually experience? How do we develop this sensitivity to something spiritual, to spirituality? Or actually, I'll ask you a better question, like we asked before. What is spirituality? So in today's lesson, this was just the intro. In today's lesson, we're going to explore the nature of spirituality by discovering the inner spiritual seeker within each of us. And we're going to develop a sense of what it means to experience spirituality. So it sounds like a pretty nice journey. So I hope all of you are following, we are on page 39. So on our journey to experience spirituality and to actually have a sensitivity to spirituality, I think you'll be surprised where the journey begins. Ready? The journey actually begins with you, inside of you. Because to appreciate spirituality in the world around us, we first have to identify spirituality within ourselves. Right? Again, I'll repeat that. To really identify and have a sensitivity for spirituality in this physical world, we first have to identify it within ourselves. So we started the lesson today with an assumption that all of us here in this class are material beings, material human beings, right? In a material physical world. So therefore, spirituality by default is something very distant. So the question is that really the case? Is spirituality really that distant? So how well do you know yourself? So for those of you on Zoom, it's gonna be a little easier. I want you to take a few moments to yourself and try to write down or think of, if you don't have a pen and paper, that's totally fine, not necessary at all. Try to record, this is the exercise on page 39, exercise 2.2. Record as many words as possible to accurately describe you. Try to write as many descriptions as you can. Or think of as many descriptions as you can. Yeah, Fran. You got to get a little closer to the mic.
A spirit.
No, just any definition, If someone to ask you, please describe yourself.
Okay.
Give as many descriptions to yourself. Marsha, what do you come up with? You're on mute.
I have number one, I have technically challenged.
That's totally fine, don't worry.
Well, but that's that you're asking me to describe me, so that's my number one characteristic.
I like that.
I have somewhat intelligent. I said I can't carry a tune, and then I was going to get into I'm not artistic, blah blah blah, and I also have somewhat kind.
Right. Okay. So I believe chances are that your list, that all of your lists include some obvious descriptions of yourself. They're a little less personal, such as I am female, I am male,
Right.
what you enjoy, what your job is, right?
Right.
Am I right, Fran, Mark,
Yeah.
Sandy, am I right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, good. Don't worry, I'm not a mind reader. This is just basic.
I think so.
Now, these are typically material-oriented descriptions of yourself. But I would imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but when I was thinking about this, I definitely thought of this, as that it probably also includes some personal and meaningful descriptions that are more spiritually inclined, right? Some of the things on the list may be how you feel about certain things, about your faith, about your convictions, things that are not really provable, right? So these are things that, even though you clearly identify with your material being, you also identify with some form of a spiritual depth within you. Now, to get a better understanding of this, let's look back. And for those of you who joined the Coffee and Kabbalah the last couple of weeks, you'll definitely have a better understanding of this. But let's look back at the very beginning of the human story, the creation of the human being. So if you open your books to page 40, this is text 1. This is a quote directly from the Torah in Genesis, in Bereshit. Text 1, Sandy, can I bother you to read text 1, page 40?
God formed the human from the dust of the ground, and he breathed into the human's nostrils the soul of life.
So what we see from here is that humans are actually very unique in the way they were created. What I mean by that is that they were created with a body and a soul. All other beings, all other creations were created in one stage. It was one singular organism. But when Hashem created the human being, Hashem formed a body. First, he created a body, and after creating a body, Hashem breathed a soul into that body. Now, because Hashem created us in such a way, Hashem created humans in such a way, this actually led to two very distinct personalities within the human being. Again, if you were at the Coffee and Kabbalah, you probably learned this more in depth, but we have a body-oriented nature and a soul-oriented nature. I think we're very familiar with our body-oriented nature. What's our body-oriented nature? So to put it simply, this is the basic human part of you that is really driven for your own interests. You want to have pleasure, you want to have honor, you're looking just to survive, right? Our bodies, why is it like this, by the way? Because our bodies are actually created from the earth. Which, by the way, on a separate note, this is the reason why the Jewish value is about burying a body, not cremating a body for this reason, because we're formed from the earth and therefore you return to the earth. But that's a totally separate discussion. But because our bodies are formed from the earth, so therefore we're naturally drawn to material pursuits, to our physical survival, right? So our body-oriented nature lives in the here and now. We want to feel good with something now. That's the way we are. This is our body nature. But we also have another part of us, which is our soul-oriented nature. So in the last lesson, we learned about our soul map. There's 10 faculties of the soul. There's the intellect, there's the emotions, but actually the soul itself is a lot deeper than just the 10 faculties of the soul. And I want to use the analogy we used last week, which is the faculties of the soul, the 10 faculties, the intellect and the emotions the faculties of the soul are like the apps on a smartphone, right? You have a smartphone, you open up, you have a ton of apps on your smartphone, but the phone itself, what's the phone itself? Not the apps, right? What is the phone itself made up of? It's a very complex piece of hardware, right? And there are a lot of different software things installed on that. This is the soul. The soul has 10 operating mechanisms, but the soul itself is something way deeper than the way it operates, than the faculties of the soul. So what is the soul? What is the soul? So to understand what a soul actually is, we turn to text 2. Text 2 is something that we recite every single morning in the morning blessings. This is a direct quote from there, from the prayer book. Fran, want to read text 2?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. My God, the soul that you placed within me is pure. You created it. You formed it. You breathed it into me.
Right. So what we see from this text is that the soul is actually a piece of God, a piece of divine spirituality. That's what it is. And the soul is really the voice that drives us to pursue meaning, purpose. It's a voice that senses the spirit in everything in life. Now, I'm sure some of you are thinking, Rabbi, seriously, this is what a soul is? It's a voice within us that is searching for meaning? No, it's a lot deeper than even that. And I want to do that. I see, Fran and Mark, you're in your kitchen. Do you have a box of matches there or a candle?
Yes.
I meant to bring, so I'm sorry, but.
Which one? I have a box of matches. Do you want a candle? Do you want a candle also?
No need. Either is fine. A match itself is fine.
Okay.
So before you strike the match, I want you to turn to text 3. Mark, this is a one-line text over here, text 3 on page 41. This is a metaphor that's given in scriptures for the soul. What's the metaphor? I can't hear you.
The human soul is gathered
The human soul is the candle of God. Okay, so I want, Fran, if you don't mind, I'm actually going to pin you. Video.
You want me to light it?
Yes,
You want
please.
me to light it?
All right, so I want you guys to look at this match right now. Okay. Notice what the flame is actually doing. I want you to also to try to flip it upside down. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay, so we can you can let it go.
Should I blow it
Now,
out?
as you see the question that we
Have I?
have. Yeah.
Blow it out?
Yeah, blow it out. Sorry. Yes. Thank you. So after observing a flame for a few seconds, what do you think is the exact metaphor? What's the metaphor of a flame? How does that connect to a soul, to a human soul? Anyone have any insight? What's the connection of a flame to a soul? Right? Nothing?
Oh, it's bright,
Bright,
it's
okay.
warm, it's warm.
Hi, 18.
It goes upwards.
It goes upwards, okay. So really, there are a lot of comparisons you can make between a flame and a soul, but today we're going to focus on only one of them. I think a very powerful one, which is brought down in the book of Tanya. The Tanya is the first book on Hasidic thought, authored by the first Chabad Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe, well, actually named after Rabbi Shneur Zalman. And this is a book of Hasidic philosophy based on Kabbalah, etc. So this is text 4 on page 42. Marsha. Hi, Nathan. Good to see you. Oh, you're not with audio.
Oh.
A second.
You want me to read?
Yeah,
Yes,
go for it,
please.
Marsha.
The nature of a flame is to flicker upward, indicating that the flame intrinsically seeks to part from its wick in order to unite with its source above. Similarly, the human soul naturally desires and yearns to separate itself and escape its body in order to unite with its origin and source in God, the blessed source of all life.
This is the comparison we're going to discuss today, which is that just like fire, a candle that Fran just showed us with a match, any way you turned it, it's always going upwards. Did you notice that?
Mhm.
It's always going upwards. The same thing is with the soul. The soul always desires to rise above and transcend the body and the material world to connect with Hashem, to connect with God. This is what the awareness of the soul is. Always trying to go upwards. And when we understand that this is the identity of the soul, now this can give us a glimpse of the definition of spirituality as well. Spirituality is being aware of the divine presence. And Marsha, we were talking about this on Sunday, but spirituality really means, I can't hear you. Let's see. Sorry, Nathan, you're having some difficulties. Let's see. One
He's
second.
muted.
All right. I'm not sure, Nathan, if you hear us, but I hope you do. If not, we're on Facebook Live as well. So it's a direct stream. So don't worry about that. Spirituality, the best definition for spirituality is such: being aware of the divine presence in everything material in this world. And Marsha, again, because you were asking me, you were having some trouble understanding this concept. But the way a soul sees the world, it sees the spirituality behind every single being, behind every single material item. So you take, for example, right? You take, for example, a chair that I'm sitting on, right? So this chair that I'm sitting on is a physical material thing, but this chair can be used to do things that are not necessarily very good. They can be used to do some just basic computer work, which is not good or bad, right? But the spirituality, the divinity in this chair is actually when I use this chair in this physical world to study a piece of Torah, to study a piece of Talmud. So that means you're actually taking this chair and exploring and revealing the divine spark that it has. When you take a cup of water and you make a blessing on it, you're taking this cup of water, which is not a good thing or a bad thing, but you take this cup of water and you actually reveal the divine spark within every single item that you touch. So by default, when we are interacting with the world, our default consciousness is not our soul intuition, it's our body oriented nature, right? Because at the end of the day, we have to survive, and our body's physical needs are immediate, they're urgent, and this is why this is the default way of functioning and thinking, because our day is driven by our day-to-day needs, right? We need our basic life, we need to survive. So we're not thinking about spiritual things at that time. And therefore, most of us, or many of us, don't really relate to the description of the spiritual seeking soul that we just learned about. And we don't really identify very much with the soul in general. Even when we do feel some spirituality in our lives, I'll give you some examples. When Sandy, do you ever feel an urge to have more meaning and purpose and depth, right?
Oh, yes.
So that's a spiritual moment,
Yes.
right? Mark, do you ever, actually, Fran, I know the answer is yes, but do you ever appreciate a good piece of art?
Yes.
Right? Of course. That's a spiritual sense. When you send some love, these are all hints of the soul peeking out within our physical lives. But these are not things that really overtake, and it's not what dominates our day-to-day life. Therefore, most people find it very hard to identify and to connect with spiritual life. But at least now we have this opening that now we can define spirituality. Once we define what spirituality is, right, this can lead us in the direction of experiencing spirituality. So, are you guys following?
Mhm.
Okay, so I want to share with you at this point, I want to share with you a video very quickly. Just a moment. Let's see. See if this is going to work. Having the same issue as I had last week. So just a moment, people. Okay, I think I got it. You guys see the video? I didn't play it yet, but you see the video?
I
Not sure if
see
that
a
was a yes.
blank screen.
How about now?
I can hear it. Yes, it says
Okay.
meditation.
We have two voices speaking to us from within. One voice is our lower order self, Nefesh Bahamis. The Nefesh Bahamis urges us to live a life of pleasure, of ease, getting what we want whenever we want it. The other voice is the voice of the Nefesh Elokis. That's our godly self. That's the self that seeks connectedness with people in love, connectedness with the world and its elements, feeling fulfilled, connectedness with Hashem. Gently close your eyes and just become aware of your inner self, your inner quiet, that place you can escape to, because it's always a place where you have your own sense of self. Allow that special place to be your refuge, that place of inner sanctity, totally protected, always safe. As you step out of that space, become aware of your two inner voices. Listen to the voice of the Nefesh Bahamis. Note what it tells you. It says, you're insecure in this world. You need to shore yourself up. You need more and more and more. Otherwise, you're unsafe. Build walls around you. Wealth. Create superficial pleasures, because life is short. The Nefesh Bahamis is the voice of the ego. Now listen to the truer voice of the Nefesh Elokis, the voice that tells you that everything possesses truth and meaning, that your happiness and joy comes from connecting truly to people, to the world around you, by connecting to the inner selves, the soulful center. The voice that tells you pleasure doesn't come from material acquisition. It comes from the smile of appreciation for having helped someone, for the small gift that you give your grandchild, for the blue sky that you wake up to. In life, choose which voice you are going to listen to. It may be that you don't need to have a battle within, a fight between them. You might even be able to transform the Nefesh Bahamis into an ally, giving its energy the capacity to do the right things. But always allow yourself to recognize that your true voice is the voice of the Nefesh Elokis. In so doing, your life will be replete with happiness and fulfillment.
So what we have over here is what we're going to be doing until the end of today's lesson is I'm going to be discussing two different forms of meditation and how to experience spirituality and how to become more sensitive to spirituality. So, meditation number one, which again, I think it's called the ideal practice. If you look at text 5 on page 43, is called the Hisbodedut meditation. It comes from the Hebrew word. The root of it is the word of badad. Ever heard of the word badad in Hebrew? Badad in Hebrew, don't worry. Badad in Hebrew actually is translated as seclusion, as aloneness. So don't get scared over here. This is not what we're doing today. But I want to just tell you what this meditation is about. See, many people, I know this is a very common thing in Israel, the Israeli backpackers. But this is not just Israeli backpackers. I think we just know about them more. But if you go to the Far East, you'll see many, many millions of people throughout the year go to seek spirituality in all these different places by all these different gurus, right? And in Judaism, we don't need to do that. Judaism teaches us you don't need to go somewhere to experience spirituality. Do you know what you need to do? You need to realize that it's within yourself. Stop looking for it in other places. I always say this famous story. If you've been at Chabad Shelton enough times, you probably know this by now, but I'll say it really, really short, where you had Rabbi Mendel Futterfass, which was actually a first cousin of my grandmother. He spent 20 years in Siberia for spreading Judaism in former Soviet Union, 20 years. And one of the episodes that he encountered while in prison, while in Siberia, was that his fellow inmates always used to play cards, but cards were illegal in prison. So what did they do? Anytime that they heard the guards coming in, they used to hide the cards. And the guards were searching all over and they couldn't find it. They searched up and down, on top of the ceiling, under the floors, never were able to find it. Literally, every piece of dust was overturned in that room to find those cards. And Mendel's looking at these inmates and he saw them playing cards seconds before. So he goes over after the guards. He says, "Tell me, how do you do it?" It's very simple. The second the guards walk inside, I put the cards in their own pocket, in the guard's pocket, right? The guard is never going to check his own pocket for the cards. He thinks it's somewhere, I'm hiding it somewhere, but really the cards are in his own pocket. And the message that Mendel always used to teach is that sometimes we feel that in order to experience something, in order to solve something, we need to go to somewhere else. But really the solution is within ourselves. It's within us. We have the key to all solutions to all the problems. Stop looking in other places for spirituality. Spirituality is within us. How do you experience spirituality within us? Not by adding, but by subtracting. What does that mean? Instead of trying to add things to your life, subtract and try to seclude yourself. Try to strip away all the material feelings that we feel day to day. That's what Hisbodedut is. It's a way of getting rid of all the material distractions by secluding yourself. It's a form of trying to discover spirituality. Take away the materialism and you'll discover the spirituality. Go to any yoga class. What do they tell you, right? You have to go to a quiet place. You have to focus, right? So you shouldn't be distracted from the outside. Hisbodedus is actually not just that you shouldn't be distracted from material distractions from the outside, but to mentally move away from material distractions inside of you. Again, not just on the outside, but from within. And when you're free from all these material inputs and stimulation, you're able to distance yourself from the materialism and you can focus on your inner spirituality. As we see in text 5, Sandy, text 5 on page 43.
Okay, we're going to start with the word seclusion. It's one of the okay. Seclusion is one of the most superior of all distinguished practices. It is the practice of the greatest saints and the medium through which the prophets experience revelation. Oh, I believe that. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
And as we see, this was actually a very, very common thing to do. As we see in text 6 on page 44. Nadine, you're with us? Do you have the book with you? I can hear you, but I guess you hear us. Let's see.
She's on mute.
All right, if you find a way to unmute yourself, I'd love to have you read some of the text here. Marcia, text 6.
He's muted also. Marcia's muted.
Yeah, just unmuted.
There you go.
Okay. It is recorded in many of the works of the medieval rabbis that seclusion, separation, and devotional clinging were practiced by the pious Jews. This is to say that when they were alone, they would empty their minds of all worldly concerns and connect their minds with the master of all. The famed Kabbalist, the Arizal, taught that this practice is far more beneficial for the soul than study, and that every person should practice this seclusion meditation according to their ability, either once a week, once a fortnight, or at the very least once a month.
So this is actually a very advanced method of meditation. Think about it. Think of yourself, put yourself in these Kabbalist shoes. What did they do? That they literally stripped away all the material feelings, literally. And they were able to delve into and focus on their spiritual selves. And the reason why this is such an advanced method is because when you do it properly, this has the power to totally shift a person's consciousness and to really elevate your awareness to the spiritual soul level, right? So this is something that I don't really have experience with, I'll be honest. I'm not a mystic. I'm not one of these great Kabbalists, but there were times that these great Kabbalists were able to do such meditations of seclusion and aloneness and to really bring themselves to such levels of spiritual awareness. But the honest truth is, like I mentioned, this is not really for the average person. I guess I should consider myself a little average, but these are very, very, very delicate. What?
I'm laughing because you said a little average. Are you average or are you not average? I think.
I'm
Whatever.
average.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
I'm a little
okay,
bit of
good.
average and a little bit not average. Hope it's not the below average. So the problem with such a meditation of aloneness and seclusion, however nice and lofty it sounds, the problem is that it's full of spiritual. We're on page 46, just so you know. It's full of spiritual danger, and the reason why I say it's full of spiritual danger is that actually there's a very famous Mishnah from the Oral Torah, which actually tells us to be careful that these types of meditations should not be taught publicly. Do you know why? If you look at text number 8, this is a very, very famous quote from the Talmud. It's on page 47, on 18, page 47, text 8. See it?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yep, I hear you.
Yes.
There you go. So do you mind reading 18, text 8?
Where it says there's more?
No, the one text 8 is where it says 4 individuals.
Oh, 4 individuals?
Yep.
4 individuals entered the orchard.
Pardes.
They explored the Torah's mystical secrets. They are Ben Azad, Ben Zoma, Achar, and Rabbi Akiva. Ben Azad gazed at the divine presence and died. Ben Zoma gazed at the divine presence and became grazed. Archer grazed and chopped down the shoots of saplings. He became a heretic, and Rabbi Akiva emerged safely.
So here we have 4 great sages. Again, 4 great sages are quoted in the Talmud. Actually tried to pursue the path of this mysticism, but only one of them managed to escape without any harm being done to him. So therefore, it's something that you have to be very, very careful. And not only that, to be honest, I don't think that this was very, very easy to practice. Just earlier today, as Jussi was taking her nap, I was sitting quietly on the couch. I was thinking of today's lesson. I was preparing today's lesson. I was trying to forget about everything, just trying to tune into something a little more spiritual, just trying to see if this meditation actually works. And the reason why this does not work, this seclusion kind of meditation, is because trying to do this, it takes tremendous amount of mental effort and training. It's not as simple as it sounds. Just be alone, just be quiet. It's really, really, really hard. And it definitely won't be possible right now in today's lesson. But that's problem number one. Problem number two, the reason why it doesn't work is because you can't really experience your soul if you're unfamiliar with your soul. The people who were successful in this meditation method were so advanced in spirituality with years of study and practice behind them that they were able to strip away these outer material, driven consciousness, and therefore they were able to delve into their spiritual consciousness very easily. But if we don't have a language to experience it with, there's nothing to talk about. So therefore, this whole method of meditation called hisbodedus, of seclusion, is not for us. You're welcome to try it at home. I'm not very convinced it's going to work, but that's why it's just not the ideal method. The ideal method is what we're going to discuss now, and this is going to be the last part of today's lesson. Today's meditation is going to be called hitbonenut. It was hitbodedut, and this is hitbonenut. I know it sounds a little similar when you don't know the words, but hitbonenut is actually, it comes from the word in Hebrew, bina. There's actually a Jewish name, bina, which means understanding. And this meditation is rooted in the practice of meditating on a concept or on an idea to deepen your understanding and having a deeper appreciation for something. So what is this method of hisbonenut? Hisbonenut with an N, all right? Studying spirituality, we're all sitting here on Zoom or on Facebook, or those of you who are going to watch later on YouTube or maybe on Facebook, whatever it may be. You can study about spirituality from today till tomorrow, right? It sounds interesting, sounds a little sophisticated, but in order for this spirituality to actually be relevant, you have to develop an appreciation for the perspective of spirituality. So obviously, step number one is studying spiritual wisdom. But in order to actually have an effect on your life, spiritual study is just abstract. It's not relevant. In order for it to really have an effect, an impact, you have to think, you have to meditate on it. In order for it to shape your perspective and to have a more spiritually inclined perspective, you have to meditate on this thing that you learned today. Right? So we're going to do a sample text. It's a long text, okay? So I'm going to read it. This is a longer text, and this is going to be a sample meditation for how to take a spiritual concept and how we're going to break it down. We're going to analyze it, take it step by step. I know, Marsha, that you told me you want to do this specifically. You want to understand what does it mean that everything has a soul. This is going to be this part of the lesson right here. This is going to be the final part of today's lesson, which if you turn your pages to text 13, right, we're going to be practicing hisbonenus. Text 13 is on page 54. We're going to study a brief text that explores the spiritual nature of reality from the teachings of Hasidic thought, which is based on the wisdom of Kabbalah. And after we study this text, after I read this text together, I'm going to ask you, or either while we're reading it or after I finish reading it, to jot down, either in your mind or with a pen and paper, some key ideas. What are the takeaways from this text? And once you tell me your takeaways, we're going to develop together a shared understanding of this exact text. What is the idea in this text that the Rebbe is trying to convey? So again, this may sound a little lofty or a little mystical, but this is it's a text from a discourse, a Hasidic discourse, which was delivered in 1898, 124 years ago, by the fifth Chabad Rebbe. Actually share the same birthday as the fifth Chabad Rebbe. And this theme of this discourse is actually about teshuvah, which is all about repenting, repairing our relationship with Hashem, with God. So bear with me again. If you don't understand it fully, that's totally fine. If it goes over your head, it's totally fine. This is on page, what was it? Page 54, text 13. Again, as I'm reading, or after I finish reading, I will ask you to jot down either in your head or on a piece of paper some key takeaways that you understood from this text. Okay, so this is where it begins. Everything that exists is comprised of a physical form and a spiritual divine energy that creates and animates the entity's physical existence. This is clearly demonstrable in animals and humans. They have an animating spirit. If the spirit were to leave their body, the body would no longer be classified as alive, and the body would begin to decompose and turn to dust. That is because the very existence of the body hinges upon the spiritual energy that animates it. The same is true of vegetation. It also possesses an animating spirit. Even inanimate objects possess some sort of energizing spirit that keeps them in existence and prevents their disappearance. Based on this awareness, spirituality is referred to as good and life because it is a living force that remains alive and in existence forever. Whereas physical matter is referred to as negative and death because it decomposes and ceases to exist without the spirit within it, and it has no means of existing independently. From my flesh, I can perceive God. Again, if you're not following, it's totally fine. You can read it yourself. You don't have to follow where I am. This is text 13, third paragraph. From my flesh, I can perceive God, meaning that human experience informs our understanding of God. We intuitively sense that we have a life force that provides us with our life, and that we have, and that is our primary identity, and that were our soul to leave our body, the body would be left like an inanimate rock and eventually decompose and disappear. The same is true with all that exists. The entire cosmos and all its content exists due to a divine spirit that gives existence to everything. That divine light enforces the entire life and sustaining power of all that exists. If it departs, all existence will revert to absolute nothingness. Okay, so I'm going to skip the last paragraph here, but this is a very, very deep concept here. I'm not sure how many of you were able to follow, but this is a deep concept and a deep idea that is attempting to reframe our entire life and the entire existence to really have us become more sensitive to spirituality. What does this idea propose? That spirituality is kind of everywhere, and the spirituality is the force that animates everything. Okay. Now, in order for this idea that we just read together, in order for this idea that we read to even have a slight impact, we have to really break down this text, analyze it, and meditate on it. But before I continue, I just want you to know, and again, I'm directing this to you, Marshall, because you had a very hard time understanding this concept of body and soul. We're using these terms very, very loosely here. The word soul, when I say the word soul or even spirituality, it's just the meaningful part of the character behind something, behind an object, right? So when I say soul, it's not that it actually has a spiritual soul, but it means that this is the character, the meaningful character in this object. So just so you know that. So just for the sake of the lesson, it's easier to use that term. So let's break down this teaching that we just read in text 13 into smaller ideas, and let's analyze them, let's chew them over, so we'll be able to begin to shift our perspective and allow this teaching to sink in. And the more we meditate on it, the deeper this awareness can potentially be. So let's spend a few moments on this text and let's read it over a couple of times. There's a lot to unpack and to analyze. what are three key ideas, as you see on page 56, what are three ideas that you were able to take away from text 13? If you have even one idea, feel free to share it out loud or on Facebook.
Well, then if you don't
You got to speak closer to the mic.
okay, how about now? If you don't have spirituality, then you can't live without it.
Okay, so you need spirituality to live, okay? Anyone else? What are the big ideas in this text? Sandy, I see you thinking very deeply. What's going on?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to read this another 15 times probably.
Yes, it's a very deep concept.
It certainly is, that everything, every person has this divine energy in the spirituality. But what it indicates is that if we, look at beautiful pictures, say, that has a hint of spirituality. Is that a correct perception? Because I don't
Okay.
think so.
Okay, yeah, I'm saying that's a very interesting idea you bring up. Okay, so let me unpack the three big takeaways that I think, again, there's no right or wrong, whatever you guys mentioned, whatever you take away from it is already good. But to me, the three big ideas are as follows. Number one takeaway is that everything, and Sandy, you mentioned this, everything, not just every human, every single thing, every creation has a divine spirit within it, which is what we'll call a soul. Okay, so again, every creation has a divine spirit in it. That's takeaway number one. Takeaway number two is that the spiritual soul of everything is its source of life. Again, the spiritual soul of the creation is its source of life. Takeaway number three is that since the spiritual content of everything is the identity of the item, of the creation, therefore, that is what we should value. We should value the spirituality behind everything, not the material part of it. So again, takeaway one is that every single thing has a divine spirit, has a soul. Number two is that the soul is the source of life for the item, for the creation. And number three, because of A and B, therefore C, therefore we should value the spiritual identity of everything. Okay, now these are nice ideas when we talk about them in 10 seconds, but let's take each of these ideas and let's flesh them out just a bit. Let's take number one, everything has a divine spirit within. So what does that mean?
When you say that, are you indicating if I'm admiring this beautiful tree and sunset, it has a spirituality behind it?
Okay, so it's a good question, very good question. I know that you asked, Marsha, you asked when you came to Coffee and Kabbalah on Sunday, you're like, does this recliner really have a soul in it? So let me answer the question, okay? What does it mean that everything has a divine spirit within it? So we spent the earlier part of today's lesson demonstrating that despite us being physical human beings, we are animated by a spiritual consciousness, a soul.
Mhm.
Now, what is this soul? The soul is that we're alive. We have the consciousness and the ability to think and to feel. There's obviously something more to us and to animals than just the physical bones and muscles and organs, which animates us with life. What is this thing that animates us with life besides these things? So let's take a little step back and understand this by way of a similar idea that is probably a little more relatable, which is that every experience that we have, I think this will really help everyone understand what does it mean that every single item has a spiritual and divine spirit. Every experience that we experience has a body and a soul to it. There is the physical act that's happening, and then there's the meaning, the content, the meaning that it actually gives off, that the meaning that it conveys, or that it's being driven by. I want you to open this exercise 2.4 on page 56. Again, every experience we have has a body and a soul. I'll go through it one by one. Let's identify the body and the soul of the following scenarios. Okay? So we're just post Valentine's Day, so I'm sure some of you had this experience recently. Dinner with a spouse or a close friend. Okay? What would be the body of such an experience? And what would be the soul of a dinner with a spouse or a close friend? What do you guys think?
Well, the soul part would be, I'm enjoying it. The food is good, the conversation is good. So I'm enjoying it. So that's the soul part.
Okay. So dinner with a spouse or a close friend, the meal, the food is the body, right? The relationship that's actually being developed over the meal and through the meal is the soul. The intention is to further your relationship with this person, right? To enjoy this time with the person and to actually have a deeper relationship. So the relationship is the soul of the dinner. The body of the dinner is the food. What about disciplining a child? The second scenario. What would be the body of such a scenario? And what would be the soul of such a scenario? Nadine, help me out of here. Come on.
I think it's all in your approach.
What would be the body of it?
The body would be, I would say on body language, or
I don't mean, by the way, like the actual physical
No.
body. These are just terms we're using.
I'm still trying to understand, knowing I'm just coming in the second class, so I do apologize for that.
No, you never need to apologize.
Well,
The body of disciplining a child, the way I see it, is the body is the actual act of disciplining. That's the body of it.
right,
right?
okay, yeah.
What's the soul of disciplining a child?
Is the emotion.
What is the emotion when you discipline a child? That you care for their growth, the love
yeah.
that you're trying to convey through the discipline. That's the soul of the discipline.
And you want to do it positively.
Correct.
You don't
Correct.
want to make them feel worse by talking down to them. You want to talk to them as a little person that is not sure how to handle a certain situation, like cleaning up your toys.
Correct. Correct. What would be exercising at the gym? What would be the body and the soul of exercising at the gym or exercising at home?
Getting on the machine and actually doing it. I'm sorry,
That's the
Graham.
body. That's the thing,
Movement,
right?
moving the body.
The actual movement of the body, the actual exercise is the body, right?
And
what's the soul?
sweating and
That's all the body. What's the soul of exercising?
the end result
Improving your health.
of what
Very good, friend. Very good. Exactly that. The fitness, the enhancement to your health, that is the soul of exercising.
and then walking out of there feeling good about what you just did. The
100%.
accomplishment of it.
The mental
The
health benefits, straight up,
Yeah.
yes. And we'll do one more scenario, shaking hands on a deal. What is the body of it and what's the soul of it?
That's oh.
You got to speak close to the mic, Mark. Yeah, so the actual shaking of the hand is the body. What would be the soul of the shake of a handshake? Well,
Whatever
more
the
than
deal
just the
is.
deal, but the shared agreement that you have, the shared agreement of trust in the deal. That's the soul of a handshake. So obviously these are just, examples and they're metaphors, but they will shed light on and give us a framework to appreciate what a soul, what a divine spirit is. So just like we know that there's meaning to everything beyond the physical characteristics that it has, we can appreciate that there's a spiritual aspect that underlies everything that we see and that we experience. I'll give one final example. I think Franny will enjoy this one, right? Because you're into art, right? A work of art. I should probably share my screen. It's going to take too long and it's getting already late. But if you look at a piece of art, okay, what is the body of and what is the soul? There you go. There you go.
Aw, aw.
That's
That's
Sadie,
cute.
right?
That's cute.
Wow,
Oh,
that is
I'm in
amazing.
love.
Okay, so all of you watching, Sandy and 18, Marsha, sorry, Frank, can you bring it back to the screen a second?
Oh, yeah, I can.
Can you
Oh.
describe, so can you guys describe the scene? Sorry, can you describe what you see?
He looks like a happy puppy.
Okay, a happy puppy.
Like, you know,
That-
like he's got no cares in the world, and
Okay. Sandy, what
He's
do you see?
love.
I see love, yeah,
Okay.
you know, and that's putting it mildly. That he's in love with the person he's looking at.
Okay, so happiness, love.
Hmm.
You know what's so interesting about this? If you actually look at the painting once again, none of what you mentioned is actually physically on that painting.
no, it's not.
All that there is on that painting
The
are
dog.
lines, shapes, and colors,
Right.
physically, right? If here, you can put away the painting, don't worry, friend. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you look at a piece of art like Fran just showed us with a very technical scientific lens, all that you'll be able to notice is very lifeless, two-dimensional lines and shapes and colors. But obviously, anyone who looks at a piece of art will be taken by the scene that it actually depicts, whether it's happiness and love, right? This is obviously the point of art, that the artist takes lines, shapes, and colors and expresses some meaning with those things and a message. He conveys a message with it. Therefore, a beautiful piece of art can actually make a very deep impression. So the lines and the shapes, even though that's all that there is on the canvas, but they're just the body of the painting. But the story that the art actually tells over is the soul. It's not physically there on the canvas, but it's just as present as the body is in the artwork, right? If anyone's going to tell you that this painting that Frandos held up just has lines, shapes, and colors, you'll laugh at them, right? That's
Right.
because there's a story behind it. It's depicting something. The world is Hashem's piece of art. So physical matter consists of lines, shapes, and colors. But the spiritual reality in this world is actually what gives shape to the world and is the deeper meaning of everything that is in this world. So that's what it means that everything has a divine spirit within it. What does it mean that has a divine soul, divine spirit? That everything has a soul and a body. So that's number one. Number two, the takeaway that the spiritual soul of everything is its source of life. Now think about the examples that we looked at before. The soul of the experiences isn't just another layer to the dinner, right? We're talking about the relationship that you have, that you actually gain through the dinner, right?
Right.
It's almost laughable to say that the relationship is just another layer that the dinner contains, right? It's not. The relationship is the main point. If the dinner is all about the food and not about the relationship and not about the atmosphere, then you're missing a big part of the dinner. You're missing the dinner, right? You don't need to sit down with a dinner with someone to have good food. You can order good food from any restaurant too, or you make for yourself as well.
True.
Or let's say you force someone to shake your hand, but there's no agreement between you, right? The handshake is just a lifeless physical gesture of two hands shaking, literally. What does it mean? The child's growth is the only reason that you discipline them. The muscle gain, the fitness gain is the cause for your workout. So the soul is actually what makes the body alive. And if the soul is missing, then these experiences don't really have value. So this is what the fifth Chabad Rebbe was saying in the text 13, that the spiritual soul of everything is really the source of its life. So just like the concept of a soul and a body are with our experiences, the same thing is with the physical life of a human being. The soul isn't just another part of who we are, right? It's not just another layer. This is actually what gives us life. It's our life force. This is what causes our heart to pump, our lungs to breathe, our brain to function. The body is dependent on the soul to be a living human being. Therefore, when someone, God forbid, passes away, what do you say? What do you usually say? That his soul has departed. What do you mean the soul has departed? What's the connection to him passing away? Because his life force has departed. Therefore, his body is just a physical body. It's lifeless. It doesn't have the force of life anymore. Right? And the same is true for the body and soul of existence. That our physical sense can only really perceive the material form of everything that exists. But once we're aware of the spiritual, of the soul that animates everything in existence, we can finally understand that's not another layer of existence. This is the spirit within everything. This is what makes it be. Everything that we experience is actually dependent on the spiritual content behind it. And finally, number 3 is that because the spiritual content is the life force behind it, so therefore we should value that the most. This is the final piece of the puzzle, and probably the hardest to accept, the most challenging to accept, but it kind of does flow logically from the first 2 steps, which is that if every material thing that we see and every experience that we have is animated by a spiritual content that's responsible for its form and its meaning, and therefore the material engagement itself is just valueless. So therefore, C logically is that the spiritual content of life is actually what we should focus on and value. It's simple. It's ABC. Right? There was one more part, but we're going to skip that part, but I would like to conclude. I think that these are the 3 key points that we're going to conclude with, and the last part will be the video, a 4-minute video, is that when you realize that there's a soul within everything, that the soul is what makes it actually exist, what makes it alive, and that the soul is the only true life. When you appreciate that, when you meditate on that, you actually will develop an appreciation for spirituality and for a deep love of Hashem. So I'm going to conclude with the video, but I think this really redefines. I think at the beginning of today's lesson, when I asked, how do you define spirituality? I think you should probably have a different answer to that question about the definition. I think now you can really appreciate that spirituality isn't something specific, but it's the soul of everything, and it's something that we can actually all access. So it's not just enough to study this and listen to an hour-long class on this, but it's actually something you have to practice as often as you can. So I'm going to share my screen once more for our final 4-minute meditation, and we will conclude with that.
I don't know if they can see.
One second.
Yes, okay.
Spirituality means to sense viscerally how meaningful every single moment and item of life is, which means to enter into a relationship soul to soul, and we can do so with everything that we find in our daily activities. So gently close your eyes and just become aware of a source of light in your head, pleasant, warm, spreading throughout your headspace, enlightening, animating, and flowing down into your lower body, feeling comfortable and warm. Intensify that light source so it spreads through your limbs, allowing them to feel animated, special, with Hashem's light, that light which is your soul's light. Everything possesses a soul spark. The stone also has a soul. If you peer into the stone and are able to see molecules, atoms, smaller particles even, all these are energies that are manifested. Beneath each of these lies a spiritual force. The spiritual force of a stone is nefesh. A flower also possesses a soul spark, but it's more developed. It's called ruach, allowing the flower to have locomotion, movement, growth, inclination towards the sun. It has both nefesh and ruach. The animal has an even more advanced soul system. It has the nefesh to maintain its physical state, ruach providing it with animation, movement, but also neshama, which provides it with rudimentary communication capacity. And then there's the human being, who possesses all three, plus the level of soul known as chaya, the level of soul that provides consciousness, awareness of the flow of time, present, past, and future, hopes, aspirations, values, beliefs. We encounter all four levels in life. Allow that encounter to be soul to soul, recognizing that everything possesses value, godliness, purpose, and only by relating spiritually to the essence of that soul do we connect meaningfully, live a deep and meaningful life.
All right. So thank you all for joining. Next week, same time, same place, on Zoom and on Facebook, we're going to be meditating on how the awareness of more divine spirit in this world will actually lead us to more joy and more purpose. So that's going to be next week's lesson. Thank you for joining. And just as a quick note before you go, this Shabbos, on a Shabbos morning, Shabbat morning, will be our first ever Shabbat morning service in Chabad Shelton. We look forward to greeting you at 10:30, and 12 o'clock will be a lavish Kiddush. You don't want to miss it. A lot of good food at 12 o'clock. We have a concept called JFK's Just for Kiddush. So if even 12 o'clock, is your time, come just for Kiddush. even that is good enough. So L'chaim, looking forward to seeing you all on Shabbos at 10:30. And
Matthew will come just for the juice.
just
Matt will
exactly.
come.
That's
Matt
just
will
for
come-
Kiddush. That's 12 o'clock. Tell Matthew he's got to be there at 10:30.
He'll be there with me.
Yeah. All right. So we'll see you, God willing. It's actually co-sponsored by